The Moton Mailbag is brought to you by the Robert Russo Moton Museum, located in Farmville, Virginia. The Moton Museum is a civil rights museum focusing on the history of Prince Edward County between 1951 and 1964.
My name is Kanan Townsend, Director of Education and Public Programs, and welcome back to the Moton Mailbag.
And I'm Leah Brown, the Assistant Director of Education. The Moton Mailbag is a weekly listener question show. Each week we'll answer questions about U.S. history, African American culture, civil rights, and more. Feel free to submit your questions via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moton Museum, or you can email us at info@motonmuseum.org.
So, Leah, we're still in the midst, of course, of COVID-19, and that's the biggest thing surrounding any news and anything. But just checking in, how are you making it in the quarantine life?
I feel like hanging in there is the only and best answer.
Yeah.
The wall's closing in a little bit, ready to go for a road trip, but gotta wait.
It's almost summertime. The temperature is
so close.
Nice, but we can't really do much.
It's not safe.
What's something that you have looked for in the store and not been able to find?
Butter. Yeah. I was like, where? Why? So the Food Lion didn't have any, but Walmart did.
Butter.
So I did the old school. Let's just stock up. I have 8 sticks in my house right now, just in case.
Butter. I didn't think that was a quarantine
I didn't
thing.
either.
But if people are buying a week or two of groceries at a time, maybe they're stocking up too. Butter.
How about you?
I finally got paper towel for the first time in 2 weeks.
I know you were worried about that.
Oh, yes. But stores are starting to do what some stores did early, which is limiting 1-2 per customer, so they have to keep it stocked, which is nice. Other than that, that was the big thing, paper towel. But, and fresh meat, but they already are limiting that to, two packs of each type per customer too, which is nice. So,
Yeah, it definitely helps.
I bought 2 weeks worth of groceries this weekend, and hopefully will not have to go back to a store until next week.
Yep.
So, but such is life. So, per usual, we've got some questions laid out for you all. Thank those who have submitted their questions. Please keep sending questions, because that's how we keep the show going. Even if they're a little bit off the wall. And I think we have maybe one that's a little, out there today. But, please keep sending in your questions, because that's the only way we can keep the show going. So we'll start off, and I'll ask Leah, and we'll go ahead and get started. First question, and this is actually from a friend of mine. What even is your job? What do you all do as museum educators? I said, that is a fantastic question. Leah, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so it depends on the museum, but my experience as a museum educator, as a historian, it's all been history museums. So what I've done has ranged from literally leading kids on a battlefield at Pamplin Historical Park in the National Museum of the Civil War Soldier. Got that all out there, that long name. Fun fact, it's a great day. The teacher had a bullhorn. So what happened was, she was like, do you want to use it? I was like, yes, with every fiber of my being, please. So literally, part of the program offerings they had, you mimic what Civil War soldiers did on different battles to kind of give an active component to learning history. But yeah, I basically got to yell maneuvers and a bullhorn. It was great. I loved it. Other aspects of museum education to use kind of not traveling trunks, but basically traveling trunks within the museum, like the touch boxes, there we go, and have people just come up and say, what is this? But I've learned sometimes you need to walk away, let people engage with it themselves, and then some may look for you for questions. Some people don't like to talk to people. I'm that kind of person in the museum. So yeah, but basically the definition of museum education is to provide ways to engage with visitors. It doesn't matter the age of the visitor, everybody can learn. And then my particular background, I'm a public historian, got my master's from NC State.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, so the training there basically was talking about collaboration, which is so important, especially at Moton, where you collaborate with everybody constantly, which is great because then you are sharing different stories at the same time. So I know different ways, procedures, how to do that and do it effectively. So yeah, museum education is just talking to different types of people about different types of stuff. But I like it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Teacher and student support. That's my, for in our area, which is civil rights history broadly, but more specifically at Prince Edward County, we provide teaching tools and can help them with learning and instructing the hard history that they might not be able to directly address in the classroom, or may be counter to what are in the textbooks. But ditto everything Leah said. I don't want to repeat, but I will say, kind of on a different note, that a lot of museums, most museums, I'll say, have small staffs. It's rather unusual to have a big staff in the museum field. I feel like, at least in my experience, and so museum staff all wear a lot of hats. So, like, yes, we are museum educators from the Moton Museum. However, we also do archive stuff. We also do research. We also do, public visitor engagement. We also do guest services. We also do bookstores sometimes. Like, that's just, you have to wear a lot of hats because we're small staff. Right now, during the Corona stuff, right, we are the media marketing team because we literally can't have people in our site. And so we're combining the worlds of education and media marketing, social media type stuff. So it's interesting. We're jacks of all trades, truly.
Oh yeah, and then we just put out our COVID-19 call for resources from our community. So if you guys I'm a journaler, so I've journaled about it already. And I'll probably send in like a letter or a note. Because Moton, we're trying to collect, I guess, a swath or to see how people have been impacted. Because it literally has changed 2020 in every way. So we want to give time to reflect, be able to record it, and then we're going to have it saved at Moton. So years from now, when educators and teachers and students want to know what happened, we'll have those resources for them. Always thinking ahead.
And by the time you all hear this will probably be a couple weeks after that. But what we'll do is, maybe when we put this episode out, we'll lift that back up in our feed on our social media pages. That way y'all can still participate, because I don't think we'll close it because we want those stories. All right, on to the next question.
Yeah.
And I'll ask this one too, because I think you're answering first. Again, and this is okay. So we're both millennials, right? And so I don't know about Leah's friends, but my friends don't know what I do, and most of them, to be blunt, don't care what I do. Even though it's really cool to work in a National Historic Landmark, a Civil Rights Museum, a place with such important history. So a lot of my friends, even some who went to school with me, don't even know who Barbara Rose Johns was. And so that was the question, like, who even is Barbara Johns? I mean, they hear the name, Barbara Johns Day, as we're recording this, is tomorrow, April 23rd. And she's such an important person in Virginia and in U.S. history, yet a lot of people just don't know who she is. So we decided to put this question: who is Barbara Johns? And I'll let Leah start the answer.
Okay, so Barbara Johns was a 16-year-old student who led a student strike on April 23rd, 1951. But that's like the big hoorah. The backstory of that is she was a girl born in New York. She moved back to Prince Edward. World War II happened, so her dad actually served. Her mom was working in D.C., so they went to live with her grandparents, she and her siblings. So, in the different stories, memories, her journals I read about Barbara Johns, Miss Joan, her sister's like, well, Barbara was a boss. So kind of like she was a leader in her own household. And as a student, she was on, I believe, the debate team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's traveled. She saw how other African-American schools were built, what resources other schools had. And she came back home to Prince Edward and saw that Moton didn't have a lot of those things. There's a story where she got her siblings on the bus. She left her lunch at home. She went back home to grab her lunch, and then she watched the bus that was only for white students, because this is Jim Crow America, segregation, literally drive by her and she was like, "You're going right by my school." It kind of helped get her activism going, but she'd already had a mindset of something needs to change. So, yeah, Barbara John, she was a student who saw inequality in her community and decided to do something about it.
I think what's particularly impactful about Barbara is that she didn't start off trying to change the world. She was trying to change her local situation. And yeah, I really love that story, right? Like Barbara, I mean, I think the word that Joan would use is Barbara was bossy, which is hilarious to us. Yeah, very, very, very humorous. But Barbara was the de facto parent because when her parents would go to work in D.C. and Barbara would kind of be that person getting their lunches together and make sure they're getting all out. She was the eldest of 5 siblings, and so she would make sure they all would get out and get on the bus. And because of that, one day she misses her bus, and then like Leah said, the white bus goes by, I can't pick her up. So she'd always had this kind of spark inside of her and this flame like, look, this whole segregation thing doesn't really make a lot of sense. But they do the strike April 23rd, 1951. They walk out of school. They go on strike for 2 weeks, 10 school days. And then kind of the rest becomes history. They file a lawsuit, Davis versus the County School Board of Prince Edward County. And on May 23rd, 1 month to the day of the protest, in the federal district court in Richmond, Virginia, and they become plaintiffs in that lawsuit, and that lawsuit would eventually join Brown versus Board of Education. Now, Barbara very much was planting seeds in a garden she would never get to see, because very shortly after the protest, she received several death threats, and there was a cross found burning on the school grounds, which the community took very much as a threat, and so for her own safety, her parents moved her away to live with her uncle, the Reverend Vernon Johns, in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, if you were in the museum, I would be like, okay, does anybody see any issue with a civil rights activist teenage African-American female going from Farmville, Virginia to Montgomery, Alabama, of all places, because it wasn't safe for her in terms of her activism, right? But you're not here, but I still said it. So she went to go live with her Uncle Vernon, who was a very outspoken civil rights pastor in his own right and a big advocate. And he very much challenged his congregation, challenged African Americans in the area in Montgomery to stand up to tyranny and oppression, so much so that Dexter Avenue actually ended up firing Vernon. And he is replaced by somebody who was young at the time, somebody who was new in the town, somebody who didn't owe anybody any money. They replaced Reverend Vernon Johns with the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Truth is stranger than fiction, I assure you. But all that being said, Barbara did keep a pretty low profile in Montgomery. She graduated high school the next year. She spent 2 years at Spelman College in Atlanta after that before transferring up to Drexel University up in Philadelphia. She settled down, she got married, she had 5 beautiful children, and she served her career as a school librarian. Unfortunately, Barbara did pass back in 1991, but her legacy does live on. Her 4 remaining siblings are still alive, and they are very, very happy at all the kind of notoriety that Barbara Johns has gotten in the past couple of years especially. So, the museum that we work at opens up in 2001 on the 50th anniversary of the strike, which was huge and a big community accomplishment. Fast forward some in 2008, I believe, on Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia, there was the statues and memorial put up for Barbara Johns, her fellow students, lawyers Oliver Hill, Spotswood Robinson, Martin A. Martin, Reverend L. Francis Griffin, and many others. That was put right in the Capitol Square in Richmond, right behind the governor's mansion, which was really cool. In 2017, you had the renaming of the Virginia Attorney General's building to Barbara Johns, which is very ironic, just given that many of those attorney generals argued against Barbara Johns and her fellow students in the court system back in the day. In 2018, we celebrated Barbara Johns Day for the first time as a state holiday in Virginia, and along many others. There are too many things to name. But Barbara was a spark. Barbara helped to lit the fire that would eventually, snowball effect into what we now know as the modern Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. She was a mother. She was a sister. She was, a grandparent. She was an educator. She was an advocate. She was a lot of things. But I encourage you, when this whole thing is over, to one, visit us at the museum so we could talk more about it. But two, there's some decent books that I think are going to be coming out soon about Barbara. For the younger reader, there's already a book, The Girl from the Tar Paper School by Terry Canfield, and shameless plug for another initiative we have going on, our Moton interview series. You can go onto our YouTube page and find our interview with the author of The Girl from Tar Paper School, Miss Terry Canfield. Is that a pretty good answer?
I think it's a good summary. I think we covered a lot.
I think we talked a lot. That's okay.
Well, that's good. That's kind of the point. We want people to know who Barbara Johns is and how somebody who regular from the community, 16, anybody can make big change. It's got to be brave to do it.
Absolutely. But, it's important to mention, too, that protests have consequence. Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of people who think about protest, a lot of people resort to protest first. And I think that that's a bit misguided, because what I don't want to come across is that these students were just upset and they just went to protest. No, they went to school board meetings. Mm-hmm. They talked to the county board of supervisors. They talked to the town council. They talked to the school board. They talked to the superintendent. They followed the processes. They went and they applied, and they appealed, and they advocated for themselves. However, they were turned down at every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And so in their eyes, really where civic engagement failed, they resorted to civil disobedience, because that was the only other option for them. And because of that, they were able to get what they had been fighting for decades for before then. But again, it had consequences. For Barbara, that meant she got sent away. She couldn't graduate with her friends, et cetera, et cetera. But, very, very important movement that they were able to accomplish. How about we do the question 5? Because we're already at 16 minutes, I think.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think that'll be good.
Cool.
All right, so skip it around a little bit. Name a song that you would consider timeless and relevant to popular culture today.
I think pop culture, society, you can't hear music without hearing Marvin Gaye. Motown in general, but I love Marvin. And so I picked What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, which is also my ringtone, if people still have ringtones on their cell phones that aren't preloaded. I think it was perfect for the time, and I think it's held up pretty strong. I think a lot of the issues that he was singing about in that song and on that whole album, the whole What's Going On album, I think a lot of that stuff still applies today. I think we're still in a state of flux, and I think we have a lot of work still to do, but I just think it's a little scary. It's a little scary to me, actually, how accurate. That song could have came out today, and I think that's relevant, what makes it timeless and relevant for me. And it's a bop. I just like it. It's a hit, but it's the meaning behind it. It's also super, super timeless. What about you, Leah?
All right. So my initial thought, I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna do 2. I'm gonna use 2. So I first went with My Girl, Temptations, because it means the Temptations. Of course, it's timeless. Absolutely. And then thinking about, in our family, if I have 3 brothers, if one of us starts it, we finish. If the cousins are there, it becomes a production. So yeah, I would say My Girl. Second one is Purple Rain. Love me some Prince. Always have. Yesterday marked 4 years since he'd passed away, and I was just like, oh my God, it happened. Because,
It's really been 4 years?
Yeah, it's been 4 years.
Wow.
And I remember vividly, I was at Pamplin working at the time. We were eating popsicles with my friend Lauren, and she was like, did you know Prince died? Immediately panicked. I was like, what do you mean? That is like the worst thing you could ever say. That's not nice. She was like, no, it really happened. So then I was in shock. Got home, and I was like, Mom, did you hear about this? She was like, yes. And routinely, I'm like, Mom, did you know Prince died? I still do that. Because it's just such a shock to me still.
Well, he wasn't old either. That's the other part.
I'm still not over it. Put him out. But
him and Michael Jackson either were particularly old when they passed. But
yesterday, looking on social media, seeing the number of people who were posting, I was like, yep, confirmed. Yep. So Purple Rain. Oh man.
Not a bad pick.
Yeah.
Not a bad pick.
Can you just hear the love and affection in my voice right now? Yeah, it's real. It's real.
I've always preferred the song Kiss to Purple Rain, but
Adore's my favorite though. But it's not iconic.
It's Prince. You can't go wrong. His Super Bowl halftime performance is one of the best of all time. I remember he had his little headscarf on. So, All right.
Yeah.
Off trackness aside, I think that'll wrap up another episode of the Moton Mailbag. Next episode of the Moton Mailbag will be here same time. I think we landed on Mondays, so check your podcast feed Monday mornings. You can hear it wherever podcasts are found: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.com, etc., etc. Just look up Moton Mailbag. Please remember to submit your questions. All of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Or you can email us at info@motonmuseum.org. And that'll be it for us today, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening.
The Moton Mailbag is brought to you by the Robert Russo Moton Museum, located in Farmville, Virginia. The Moton Museum is a civil rights museum focusing on the history of Prince Edward County between 1951 and 1964.